1. Cowboy Wash, Sleeping Ute Mountain, Colorado. 15 miles west of the cliff palaces of Mesa Verde, on the low slopes of a mountain the Ute call the Sleeping Warrior, there is a cluster of ordinary pit houses. Nobody would look at them twice. Then you learn what came out of the ground here. In one of those small houses, archaeologists found the remains of 12 people. 7 of them had been taken apart, the long bones cracked open the way you crack a bone for the marrow. The surfaces polished smooth from being turned in a cooking jar over heat. And in the corner, in a hearth that had gone cold roughly 900 years ago, someone had left human waste that still carried a human muscle protein. The same protein turned up inside one of the cooking pots. Now, here's where I have to be honest with you, because this is where it gets argued about. A team of scientists says the only thing that explains all of that at once is cannibalism. Other researchers and a lot of Pueblo people push back hard on that reading. They'll tell you the evidence has been stretched, that there are other explanations. That fight is real, and it is not settled. So I'm not going to tell you what happened in that room. What almost nobody disputes is the timing. Around the year 1150, whatever went on here, the people who lived at Cowboy Wash got up and left. The fire went cold, and nobody came back to light it. And what gets me, what I can't shake, is that this isn't the only place it happened. Hold that thought, because it happens again, and it happens worse, about 100 miles east. Number 2, Sacred Ridge, Ridges Basin, Colorado. If Cowboy Wash was a house, this was a town. Just southwest of Durango, in a basin that a reservoir now covers, there was a village of 22 pit structures, one of the most important early sites of its kind anywhere in the region. And in 2 of those pit houses, archaeologists counted almost 15,000 fragments of human bone. Not a dozen people this time, at least 35, men, women, and children, something close to half of everyone who lived there. What the bones show is the part I'll say plainly, and then I'll leave it. They were hurt before they died, the feet beaten, the scalps taken, and nearby the tools you'd use to do it, axes that came back from the lab testing positive for human blood. The disagreement here isn't whether it happened, it's why. The lead researchers found something strange in the teeth and the bone chemistry. The people who died were biologically distinct from their neighbors, a separate group, singled out. They argue this may be one of the earliest cases of ethnic cleansing in North America. Other archaeologists say warfare. Others say the execution of people accused of witchcraft. That's an open argument in the literature right now, and every side is staring at the same 15,000 pieces. Here's the detail that stays with me. You can't visit Sacred Ridge. It's gone, deliberately flooded, sealed under a lake where people run boats in the summer. The largest deposit of butchered human remains in the ancient southwest is underwater. And the thing about water is, it hides a place completely, which is exactly what happened to the next one, except the next one swallowed a living man. Number 3, Davis Gulch, Escalante Canyons, Utah. Everything so far has been old. This one is not. In November of 1934, a 20-year-old artist named Everett Ruess loaded 2 burros and walked down into Davis Gulch alone. He was good at this. He'd been wandering these deserts for years. He was never seen again. When searchers finally came looking, months later, they found the burros. Alive, penned in a little brush corral, waiting. They found his camp. They found his gear. What they did not find was Everett. No body, no journal, none of his paintings. There was exactly one thing left behind, and it's the reason people still talk about him 90 years later. Carved into the wall of an ancestral Puebloan cliff dwelling, in the hand of a young man who's about to disappear, was a single word: Nemo. 1934. Nemo is Latin. It means no one. Nobody knows what happened to him, and people have spent their lives trying. Some say he crossed paths with cattle rustlers hiding in that country, and they killed him to keep him quiet. Some say he drowned trying to cross the river. Some say he chose it, that he walked off into Navajo country on purpose and let Everett Ruess cease to exist. In 2009, a body turned up on a ridge nearby. The DNA seemed to match, and then the match fell apart, still open. But here's what I can't get past. He didn't just vanish. He vanished into the exact same canyons the ancient people had emptied out 6 centuries before him, and on his way, he chose to carve the word "no one" onto their ruins. The gulch is underwater now too, the carving with it, and whatever was in that canyon that took a careful, experienced man. The people who lived here first seem to have been afraid of something as well. Number 4. Sego Canyon, Thompson, Utah. Come up out of the water and into the light, and the fear changes shape. It stops being something that happens to people and becomes something painted on a wall, watching them. On the sandstone in Sego Canyon, there are figures, life-size, broad at the shoulders and tapering down to nothing. No arms, no legs. Their eyes are hollow or missing entirely, just dark sockets. Some of them have shapes rising off their heads that people have described, ever since they were first recorded, as antennae. They are old. Some of this style of painting may go back 8,000 years, and they're set up on a ledge about 20 feet off the canyon floor, so they look down at you. Here's the honest state of it. No one can tell you what these are. The mainstream reading in archaeology is that they're shamanic, visions seen in a trance, painted onto the rock. They are strange enough, though, that they've been put on television as supposed proof that something visited this planet a very long time ago. I want to be straight with you. That's not evidence, that's a claim. What's actually true is smaller and stranger. We have the paintings, we have theories, and we do not have an answer. What I'll say is this: they do not look like people, and they do not look friendly. There's a thing that happens when someone walks into that canyon for the first time and looks up and realizes how many of them there are, and how long those hollow eyes have been pointed at that exact spot. People go quiet. Locals will take you there just to watch it happen. And the people who painted them didn't stay either. Nobody on this plateau did. But before they left, some of them built things that shouldn't be possible. Number 5. Hovenweep, the Utah-Colorado line. The towers don't make sense, and I mean that literally. The people who study them for a living will tell you they don't know what they're for. Strung along the canyons where Utah meets Colorado are 6 small villages, and rising out of them are stone towers. Square ones, oval ones, perfect circles, D-shapes. Some are balanced on top of boulders right on the edge, and they have stood there, plumb, square, not leaning, for 800 years. In places, the stonework is finer than the famous ruins at Mesa Verde. Somebody very good built these on purpose, with enormous effort. For what? Nobody can say. Every reasonable guess has been put forward. Watchtowers, defensive keeps, granaries, astronomical observatories lined up to the sun and the moon, ceremonial buildings, and every guess runs into the same wall. And the wall has a name. Square Tower, because one of the finest towers in the whole complex isn't up on the rim where a lookout belongs. It's down on the floor of the canyon, down where it can't see out and can't watch for anyone coming and can't defend a thing. A lookout that can't look out. Pick your theory and that tower breaks it. There's a quieter detail underneath. Some of these towers connect to underground ceremonial chambers by tunnels. You could pass from one to the other without ever coming up into the daylight. And the name is the last thing. Hovenweep isn't the builder's word for it. It's a Ute word, and it means deserted valley. It was named by people who came later, walked in, found the tower standing empty and perfect and silent, and never learned who had left them or why. They kept building right up until the end, and nowhere did they build bigger than a dry canyon in New Mexico where, by rights, nobody should have built anything at all. Number 6. Pueblo Bonito, Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. Chaco Canyon is a dry, hard, low place with bad water and no timber. It is the last spot a sensible person would choose to build a city. They built one anyway, the largest building in North America, and it stayed the largest for something like 800 years. Pueblo Bonito rose 4 and 5 stories, with around 700 rooms, all raised by hand. And they didn't just pile up stone. The long southern wall runs true east to west. A wall inside runs true north to south. At noon, on that inside wall, there's almost no shadow. The building is squared to the world itself. To roof it, they carried in something like 26,000 trees on their backs from mountains 30, 40, 50 miles away. No wheels, no horses, no oxen, just people walking timber across the desert again and again until a city stood in a place that couldn't feed one. And nobody can tell you why here. Why this canyon, when there was better ground with water and wood not far off? The honest answer is that the reason is lost. And there's a second question stacked on the first. After all of that, Pueblo Bonito was formally shut down. The rooms were sealed. Within about a generation, it was abandoned. A thing that took lifetimes to raise was closed like a book. Here's the part that opens a door onto something stranger. In one room, they found the bones of 34 scarlet macaws, jungle birds, carried more than 1,000 miles up from the tropics of Mexico. Beside them, jars that tested positive for chocolate. A city in the high desert, reaching 1,000 miles south for birds and for cacao. That was a place keeping records in stone and trade. But not everyone out here was building. Some of them were painting. And one wall in Utah has been unsettling people for as long as anyone has known about it. Number 7. The Great Gallery, Horseshoe Canyon, Utah. Deep in a remote canyon in Canyonlands, on a stretch of rock about 200 feet long, there are roughly 80 figures painted in red. The tallest of them stands over 7 feet. They call him the Holy Ghost, and the way he was made is part of why he unsettles people. The paint was blown, sprayed from the mouth, so the figure has no hard edge. He looms out of the stone like he's forming out of it, or fading into it. You can't tell which. The argument here is about time, and it's a real one. In 2014, a team used a dating method based on when the rock last saw sunlight, and pinned this panel to somewhere between 1 and 2,000 years old. Other researchers hold the older line 4,000 years, even 7. That gap isn't sloppiness, it's a genuine standoff, and it matters because it changes who these painters even were. Right now, nobody has won. And the figures themselves, nobody can tell you what the Holy Ghost is. He has no arms and no legs. He hangs on the wall above the wash, taller than a man, flanked by smaller shapes that seem to attend him. People who stand in front of him almost always reach for the same word. They say it feels like being looked at, like the wall is aware of you, by something that was already ancient when the pyramids were new. That's a painting that watches. 60 miles south in the same canyon country, there's a thing that does something no painting can. It caught the sun, and it held it for 1,000 years. Number 8. The Sun Dagger, Fajardo Butte, New Mexico. Near the top of a 400-foot butte, 3 heavy slabs of stone lean against the cliff. Behind them, carved into the rock, is a spiral, and for a few minutes on the longest day of the year, a blade of light slides down through the gap between those slabs and pierces that spiral dead through the center. On the shortest day, 2 blades bracket it. At the equinoxes, another dagger splits a second spiral nearby. Whoever made this was tracking the whole year with sunlight and stone, and there's evidence they were tracking the moon too, on a cycle that takes almost 19 years to complete. Now, there's a real debate, and I'll give you both sides. Those slabs weigh tons. One camp, the people who first documented the site, argued the physics rules out an accident, that the stones could not have simply fallen into that arrangement, that they were placed. Others argued the builders were clever, not miraculous, that they found a natural rockfall and carved to fit it. And the moon tracking claim has its own skeptics, so it sits unresolved. But here's the part that raises the hair on my neck. It worked. For something like 1,000 years, that dagger found the center of that spiral every single solstice. And then, in 1989, not long after modern feet had worn down the ground around it, one of the slab shifted, just slightly, and the dagger stopped hitting the center. A machine that ran perfectly for a millennium broke almost the moment we arrived to admire it. The butte is closed now. No one is allowed up. They built a road too out of that same canyon, and that road is stranger than the calendar because the road goes nowhere at all. Number 9. The Great North Road, Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. Out of Chaco runs a road, an engineered one, graded, edged, in places 30 feet across, wide enough that you'd expect it to be carrying half a nation's traffic. It runs almost perfectly straight, and it runs north for about 35 miles, and it arrives nowhere. There's no lost city at the end of it, no second Chaco, no market, no great settlement waiting to be found. A road is a line between 2 places that matter. That's the whole idea of a road. This one connects Chaco to the empty northern horizon, and then it stops. People have spent a lot of effort asking why anyone would grade 35 miles of formal highway to reach nothing. Here's the reading that I find hard to sit with. In the Pueblo understanding of the world, north isn't just a direction. North is where the people came from, the direction of the place of emergence, the opening they climbed up through out of the world below to reach this one, which has led some to call the Great North Road exactly what it looks like. Not a road to a place, but a road to a direction. A road built to point the living back toward the doorway they came out of. A 35-mile line aimed at the underworld. So maybe it was never meant to take you anywhere you could walk to. And if you think a road to nowhere is strange, wait until you see what they built on a knife-edge ridge in Colorado, and the impossible thing they were trying to line it up with. Number 10. Chimney Rock, southern Colorado. Far from Chaco, off on its own, there's a great house perched at the top of a high, narrow ridge, next to 2 natural stone spires that stand up side by side like a gun sight. Building up there was miserable. Everything, every stone, every roof timber, every drop of water had to be hauled up a thin spine of rock. By every practical measure, it's the wrong place to build, unless you knew what happens between those 2 spires. Because at one particular moment, the far edge of a lunar cycle called the Major Standstill, the moon rises and comes up framed exactly, perfectly, between the 2 towers of rock. And here's the thing that stops me cold. That moment only comes around about every 19 years. You cannot notice this by accident. You cannot catch it in a season or a decade. To know that the moon would rise between those spires, someone had to be watching that horizon and recording it and handing the knowledge down across generations long enough to be sure before anyone laid a single stone. And the tree ring dates back it up. When they cut the timbers to build the great house, The years line up with the standstill. They didn't just happen to build near a place where the moon does something beautiful. They watched the sky for 2-3 generations until they knew exactly where to stand. And then they built a building to catch the moon in the act and timed the raising of the walls to the sky itself. They were reading the heavens like a book, which makes the next thing all the harder to explain because they knew exactly what was coming and they moved into the cliffs anyway. Number 11. Cliff Palace, Mesa Verde, Colorado. This is the one everybody pictures. A whole stone city tucked up under a cliff overhang, more than 150 rooms, over 20 of the round ceremonial chambers, home to something like 100 people. It was found by accident in 1888 by 2 ranchers out looking for stray cattle in a December snowstorm, who looked across a canyon and saw a lost city sitting in the rock. Think about what it takes to build here. You're not building on open ground. You're building inside a cliff, hauling stone and water and children up and down the rock face, walling up an entire town in a place that is deliberately, defiantly hard to get to. People don't do that for the view. They do it when they need the wall at their back. And then, after all of it, within about 100 years, they walked out of Cliff Palace and never returned. The leading explanation is a brutal, decades-long drought, and that's real. But why they left so fast and why they'd climbed up into these defensive cliffs in the first place is still openly argued. And here I need to correct something because it's the whole spine of this list. When the first settlers found these empty cities, they told themselves a neat little story, that the people who built them had simply vanished, gone, melted into thin air mysteriously, all at once, leaving ghost towns behind. That story is wrong, and the truth is stranger than the story, which is exactly where the rest of this is heading. But first, there's a rock in Utah that holds 2,000 years of writing that nobody alive can read. Number 12, Newspaper Rock, Bears Ears, Utah. On a single face of dark desert rock, there are more than 650 carvings, and they were not made all at once by one people. They were added over roughly 2,000 years. Archaic hunters, then the Fremont, then the ancestral Puebloans, then the Ute, culture after culture, separated by centuries, each one walking up to the same rock and adding to it. That's the first thing nobody can explain. Why this rock? Out of all the stone in all that country, why did group after group, across 2,000 years, choose this one panel and keep the conversation going? Something about it mattered enough to pull people back to it for longer than most civilizations last. And the second thing is simpler and worse. No one can read it. There's no agreed translation. We can see every mark in perfect detail, and we cannot tell you what a single line of it means. And it's not all deer and hunters. Look closely, and there are figures with too many toes on their feet. People riding animals that don't match anything that lived out there. Shapes that just don't line up with the world the carvers walked through. The Navajo name for the place translates roughly to the rock that tells a story. We can hear that it's telling one. We just have no idea what it says. Some of what these people left behind, though, wasn't written down for us to puzzle over. It was hidden, tucked into cliffs, high up, where you weren't supposed to reach it. Number 13, Moon House, Cedar Mesa, Utah. Out on Cedar Mesa, hard to reach even now, there's a cliff dwelling that takes its name from what's painted inside it. A band of pale white dots and a shape like a crescent moon running along the wall. To get there, you work a difficult backcountry route, and these days you need a permit even to try. It was built, like so much out here, to be reached only by people who already knew the way. And it was abandoned, like all the rest, around the year 1300. Which brings back the question that keeps surfacing on this plateau and never gets a clean answer. Defense against whom? These people kept choosing the hard, high, hidden places, the cliff ledges, the walled alcoves, the spots you can only reach if someone lets you. That instinct only makes sense if there was something to hide from. And for this stretch of time, no one has ever produced the enemy. We can see them bracing for something. We cannot see what. Inside, that band of moons runs around the room. And when you sit with it, it reads less like decoration and more like a count. A tally of something, moon after moon after moon, following the sky the same way everything else out here does. Except it stops. It just ends. Set down, mid-count, by people who walked away before the counting was done. They were careful with what they stored too, almost frighteningly careful. There are places out in the Utah desert where they hid the one thing you'd think they'd keep closest. Number 14, the cliff granaries, San Rafael Swell, Utah. Scattered across the San Rafael Swell and the canyons around Range Creek are small stone rooms, sealed up and tucked into the cliff faces. They're storehouses, granaries where the harvest went, and some of them are set so high, on ledges so sheer, that to reach them today, you need climbing rope. Stop and think about what that means. This is where they put the food, the corn, the seed for next year, the single most precious, most necessary thing they owned, the thing that stood between the whole community and starvation. And they didn't keep it close. They didn't keep it handy. They hauled it up a cliff and hid it behind stone in a place you can barely climb to. There's really only one reason you make your own food that hard to get at. Something was taking it. Something you couldn't stop any other way. And once again, no one can name what. The hiding places are everywhere. The raiders are nowhere in the record. Here's the detail that lands hardest. Some of these granaries were found still sealed, with the corn cobs still inside them, still waiting, stored for a season the owners fully expected to see. A harvest set aside for a year that, for them, never came. They sealed the door, and then they left, and nobody ever came back to open it, because they were all leaving, every one of them, all across this plateau, at nearly the same time. And that, the thing under every site on this list, is the last stop. Number 15, the Great Walkout, the Four Corners. Here's what actually happened, as best as anyone can tell. In the late 1200s, across the entire Colorado Plateau, Mesa Verde, Hovenweep, the Chaco Outliers, Cedar Mesa, all of it, tens of thousands of people left. Not over centuries, not town by town, slowly, nearly all at once. They picked up and moved south to the Rio Grande and to the Hopi Mesas, where their descendants are living right now, today. So let me put down the myth for good, because I promised you the truth was stranger. The ancestral Puebloans did not vanish. They didn't melt into thin air. We know where they went. The DNA of their own domesticated turkeys traces the path, and the Pueblo people themselves have always known, because it is their own history, and they never lost it. The mysterious disappearance was never the mystery. It was a story told by outsiders who couldn't imagine that the answer was simply, they walked and their children are still here. The real question, the one that's actually still open, the one nobody can close, isn't where they went. It's why they went. Why an entire civilization would abandon everything at once. Walk away from cities they'd carved into cliffs. From observatories they'd watched the sky for generations to build. From granaries still full of corn, sealed for a spring that never came. From a road that pointed the way home. Why they fortified against an enemy no one can name, and then, altogether, left that enemy the whole country. And that's the thing I can't put down. Every single place on this list ends the exact same way. Mid-sentence, the moon count stopped partway, the corn still on the shelf, a word that means no one scratched on the wall, and in a hamlet on the slope of a sleeping mountain, a fire that went cold 900 years ago, and nobody ever came back to light it. They didn't vanish. They chose to go. All of them. And they pulled the door shut behind them. The question was never where they went. The question is what they were leaving.